ANOHNI, while not being the most prolific releaser of the musics, is a pretty versatile artist. Over the years, we've seen some really interesting releases from ANOHNI in different names, under different pseudonyms. The Hercules and Love Affair album that came out in 2008, I think it was, is always one that stands out for me as being a pretty interesting release from an artist who wasn't really known for anything like that before, but came through with some pretty very obviously 2000s inspired indie dance bangers. It was pretty fun, but ANOHNI prior to that was known as a bit more of a emotional singer-songwriter in the chamber pop world with the Johnsons. And of course, then later on, we did have the ANOHNI album that came out a few years back, maybe even longer now. Was it like 2016 or something, possibly? It feels like it could be longer than I'm realizing, with the more kind of like electronic leaning stuff as well. So yeah, some interesting stuff over the years from ANOHNI. Never loved anything though. I will say that. Never been like a lover of anything that we've heard from ANOHNI, but I think this new album is the first taste of that for me, where I've absolutely come out of it thinking, yeah, this shit is great. I hadn't even mentioned like the Bjork affiliations in that previous part there as well. So of course ANOHNI has gotten around, but one thing we haven't seen ANOHNI do so far is a soulful release, and it only took me until this very album to realize how bloody soulful and powerful ANOHNI's voice is. And it might sound silly to some, because obviously I think that has always been a really interesting aspect of their music, the voice, the really standout sort of wails and the emotional wobbles that come through in the singing. It's always been there, but it never really occurred to me that how perfectly this kind of singing would do for like a more soulful, bluesy album. And Jesus Christ, we've been given the goods with this one. It Must Change was one of those moments where I just kind of like was sat listening, sort of waiting to hear what I was going to get when you click on an album for the first time, of course. And I kind of just had that like, oh, like moment, because I think I was laid in bed at the time. I just wanted to peep a track from it. I was like, let's just try the first track. And I was pretty much like awoken in that moment. I needed to go to bed, but I was really like, oh, wow, okay. Like the touching, soulful performance coming through from ANOHNI here is just immediately like transpiring, really. It just really takes you back, because you're not really expecting this kind of stylistic feel, I don't think. Well, I personally wasn't anyway. But yeah, the touching feel of the performance just grabs you. The emotion behind it is really potent. And across this album, honestly, it gets even stronger. Like, this might just be a taste of what's to come, because I think at points it hits you even harder than this one. Sliver is comforting in sound, just really welcoming and an inviting song, even if, you know, the lyrics aren't necessarily going for that. I feel like how delicate and soft it's approaching the sound just makes you feel like you're just warm and you're by like a campfire or something. As cheesy as hell as that sounds. But then you get to Can't, which is one of the absolute mammoth tracks on this album for me. It is just a massive song with how the instrumentation and the production just feels so fuller. The rock leanings of the song are pretty fantastic as well. It enters some pretty bombastic moments actually with the drumming. Reminds me of something Alabama Shakes would do, and I think Alabama Shakes' Sound in Colour is not only become quite a bit of an underrated album, but is an excellent album from 2015. That still to me is a highlight of that year for sure, and anything that's going to remind me of that kind of soulful approach is a win-win for me. But my god, the way that ANOHNI is just yelping out these moments where the instrumental starts crashing together and she's like, I can't over and over again. It sounds fantastic, man. And I think lyrically as well is just adding to the power to this idea of, you know, I don't want to be in this place because you're not here anymore. I'm not seeing your face. It's just, I can't do this. I can't be here if you aren't there, which could be a metaphor, but also could be more so about losing somebody as well. You could take it for either message really, and I think it would still work both ways. But yeah, I think this is easily the best track for me. Not to say that the other tracks aren't as good, but it just is one of the most powerfully powerful moments I think I've heard on an album this year. It just really takes you takes you to church. Really, it does feel like that as well, but also hits you in the gut a little bit as well with the lyrics. But Scapegoat, gotta mention this one because I think this might be one of the first signs of a more political or socio-political track talking about society here. I think this track is really good though. I think it's really handled beautifully. Again, ANOHNI being transgender makes the song hit even harder because it makes you think that she is probably talking about that part of her identity and how, you know, she doesn't feel like she's accepted in the world, and, you know, just kind of feels like she's killable, which is one of the opening lines of the track, which is pretty hard to stomach when you first hear it. "You're so killable" is like a crazy way to word it. Like, just hearing that immediately makes your ears perk up and makes you think, what's this going to be about? But of course, then discussing about how she is a scapegoat, and then later on twists it and talks about how you're my scapegoat, which is quite a beautiful way to sort of turn a negative into a positive and be like, no, actually, I'm going to make this my thing. I'm going to make it I'm going to kind of like take the power back from the word, or take the power back from the impact, and make it my thing, which I think is really good. But yeah, I can't really view this song in any other way. I think it's got to be about her experiences as being transgender in this world, to be honest with you, because again, even when you look at the album cover, Marsha P. Johnson is on it as well. I just think it's got to be about that, and a really beautifully handled track. Like, the approach to it, the lyrics are just so stunning. It's brilliant, and it's hard hitting as well. Makes you really stop and think, you know. I love songs like this that make you think that way, because it's like, how can I be better as an individual? Why is it that there are people out there that feel this way in the world? They just want to live and be themselves, and they should be allowed to do that. And it's like, if there's something I could do to make even the smallest difference, it just makes you want to think about things. It makes you want to feel like you're doing more, and feel like you can be a better person than you already are. Even if you aren't necessarily contributing to the negativity, it still makes you stop and think, you know. And I think it's a really powerful track. The haunting, elongated, like drony guitar towards the end as well really sounds fantastic. Another great song. And as well as that, you've got other tracks on this album too that are kind of like scattered throughout in like peppered ways, where they're like 1 to 2 minutes, and they kind of keep popping up here and there. It's My Fault is another track as well. Again, feels quite emotionally heartbreaking in the way that she's presenting the lyrics on this one. But again, it's so short and so straight to the point, you'd think, maybe these tracks could be longer, which they possibly could. But I think the emphasis on the vocals and how harrowing ANOHNI is in the way that she sings, actually it doesn't make me too fussed that they're short. I quite like these moments that focus a bit more on her voice, and then there's more of these instrumentally developed tracks that come as well. It's a nice mix and match of that. Why Am I Alive Now? One of the more, I guess, self-aware tracks on this album. Again, super heartbreaking with the lyrics here. There's just so much to unpack with the lyrics, and making you kind of think, is this about that? Could this be about that? Could this be about that? There's probably more to the story here that isn't necessarily on the surface, but I just think ANOHNI as a writer is quite simplistic at times, actually, with some of the writing, but it's how you're presenting the words that's having the impact for me. Like those wails, those wobbles I was talking about, the harrowing feel to her voice, it all really hits. And over these instrumentals too, it's just a match made in heaven. Like, it's perfectly executed throughout for me, man. I really like this. I think the more soulful feel is going to appeal to me because I love that style of music anyway, but this change and pace and how ANOHNI's approaching these tracks is just so well done. And yeah, I feel like it's one of those albums that we should have had years ago. Like, where was this before? I don't really know. It's quite an odd one. But it's great for me. It's great. And shout out to the Johnsons as well. I think this is technically ANOHNI and the Johnsons. I haven't really mentioned that throughout this this video, or the Johnsons, I guess you could say. You know, maybe they're not all called like Jake Johnson and John Johnson and Jacob Johnson or whatever. I know it's just the name of the artist, but I've seen it listed just as ANOHNI, and then I've seen it listed as ANOHNI and the Johnsons. So I feel like I'm not sure who to credit here, really. I feel a bit conflicted. I don't know. Whoever it is, right? We know it's ANOHNI, and we know it's fantastic, and we know it's great. 8 out of 10. It is so bloody good. One of the best of the year so far, easily. Maybe could even go higher, honestly, if it was on a different day. But regardless, it's great. Love it. Fantastic stuff. Really, really appreciate the delicacies behind the vocals and the instrumentation on this one. It's just so well put together. And the slower tracks as well work really nicely and mixed in with the more kind of upbeat moments too. It's great. Love this album. One of the best of the year. Please check it out if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already as well. Tell me your thoughts in the comments, and have a good day. Goodbye.